at a time. So you start at the beginning of the line, you send characters as pictures going from left to right. And if your synchronization isn't perfect, it rolls off the paper tape. So you have the letters, but you might have the top of the letter on the bottom of the line and the bottom of the letter on the top of the line. So you're never quite sure what you're going to get, but you can usually piece it together. And those were the highlights from last year, I think. Everything else was pretty straightforward.
But
Sure.
all right. Last year, the main metric of performance was the hop count, simply how many times your data could change formats. And I don't remember what yours was. It was like 11 or something.
It was
Yeah.
the same. We tied on that.
Okay, you tied on that, but it was like from typed text to the spoken Pikachu names to serial out to the PIC controller, PCM out to the RC controller, PCM across radio to the servo controller, and then semaphore, which was actually watched by a video camera. This is the cool part. This video camera was watching the semaphore man's arms and interpreting blocks of color in the image to mean certain things and reconstructing the letters that the semaphore was indicating. Those went where? Was that to the printer controller?
Back through the computer to the printer.
Okay, yeah, to another computer that sent the characters over infrared to the printer. And so this was, something like 10 hops. Same as actually if you totaled up all the links in Amish One setup. And so they tied. So this year, you're going for the tin cans and string bonus.
Correct.
Now, I don't know how many you've read the rules for anything but Ethernet, but there's a 5-point bonus. Maybe it's more. I think it's 5 points. For anyone actually transmitting data over tin cans and string. And in this case, it's a plastic cup and a string and a tin can on the other end. That works. That works. What else have you got?
Well, the Spark transfers data over parallel and SCSI. That might be dead. The hard drive doesn't want to load the parallel port module.
Let's get you another mic.
Time for change. Yes, it seems that all the turmoil has blown the Spark's mind. The parallel port module doesn't want to load anymore. It's rebooting right now, so it might be less temperamental next time around.
Yeah, there was a power failure during when judging was supposed to happen this year. So, minor setback.
Minor setback. The camera link is down currently due to the fact that I left the camera out in the hallway last night, and it seems to have walked away. But I tried to work around that, and that's not quite completed yet. Still have a buffer overflow on the Java to bypass that.
So you're writing code. Like as soon as you run out of this room and back over there, you're writing code to make this thing work.
Yeah, hopefully the sun is working, or else the code will never get run because it can't get past the sun part
Okay.
to get to that code.
So the plan is,
Big Bang video.
hopefully by maybe closing ceremonies, we'll have some final judgment. Because this year's other entry, Paul Timmons, who you may have seen during his other talk about how to survive a federal investigation, also has a living room and a bedroom and the rest of the house full of hardware. And he seems to have brought most of it. He's got T1 interfaces, ATM, HDLC, IDSL, some sort of DSL. I think it's IDSL that can run back to back without a DSLAM in the middle. And then he's got this PBX, which isn't really a PBX. Technically, it's an intercom that he picked up at the Findlay Ham Swap for $5. It's yay big. It's East German 1940-something manufacturer. It's a step-by-step telephone system. It doesn't connect to the real telephone network, so it's not a PBX. But you pick up an extension, and it generates dial tone. You pulse dial some digits, and you get to watch. It selects a digit, and then you dial more digits, and it generates ring and all this stuff. And when the other extension answers, it connects the call and everything. And I saw a modem. I saw a pair of modems connect through this thing. I'm not exactly sure how or what it took to make that happen. There was some phone cord making and some
They
punching
actually
down of.
had to war dial to figure out which
Oh, yeah.
plug they were
They
plugged
didn't know which
into.
extension was which, so they had to war dial the darn thing to find it. But there, what is it, like 9600 they were getting through the thing?
I saw 9600. I don't think it was stable, so I think they were in the process of stepping that down.
Yeah. Okay, it's at 1200.
Okay.
So, if Paul gets all that running, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, then we might have a real competition on our hands. Barring that, I think Strider's going to walk away with this one, because yesterday, before the camera disappeared, the system was about 90% working. The camera link was the flaky part, but the Dance Dance Revolution, you didn't talk about that. He's running a serial port. He's bit banging with a really tight little loop that runs in the CPU to just twiddle the lines up and down on the serial port really, really fast, so that the signal coming out the serial port looks like an NTSC video signal.
Also known as television.
So it goes through a modulator into a decoder or something like that, and out to a screen, actually out as a digital signal to an LCD screen, where it shows up as a tic-tac-toe board. His software is generating a tic-tac-toe and bit-banging it out via serial. And then the problem is the video is really noisy. Humans can clearly see it's a tic-tac-toe board, but maybe a camera wouldn't be good at distinguishing those images. So what he's got is a DDR pad on the floor, and some human has to volunteer to be in the middle of this thing and step on the pad in sequence with the X's and O's that appear on screen. And this forwards the data on to the next hop. I highly recommend trying this out. If you walk by when the machine is running, jump on the pad and play some tic-tac-toe. Every game's a cat's game. You don't have to worry about being embarrassed because you won. Or lost. But what else is your machine doing?
Bunsen brought
Bunsen brought laser modems, intending to integrate them into someone else's thing because he's only got one hop. But he's got one hop of laser pointers driven off a serial port that fire modulated beams of light across the room at a photodiode, which then drives the other serial port. It's bidirectional. It's pretty stable as long as they don't go out of alignment. Up to maybe 56K, maybe 115 too. It depends on how shaky the tables are that are pointing the beams at each other. But so that's where I hope this all goes, is that he brought some equipment with the idea of rolling it into someone else's setup. It's got standard interfaces. You don't get much more standard than RS-232. It's been around since like the 60s. And so I'd love to see, once the actual judging is done, I'd love to see these machines stretched together into one long setup. You know, through the semaphore, the wig-wag, and the DDR, and the T1, and the IDSL, and the laser modem, and the intercom, and who knows what else. I'd love to see all this set up. And next year, I'd love it to be even bigger, which is why you need to bring your toys. Everyone walks by these tables and says, "Oh, that's so cool. I could have done like this, and I got some of those at home, and I just didn't have time." Make time. Next year, even if you only bring 1 or 2 hops, bring some gear. Get it working before you come. This was my mistake. I brought some other toys I was going to play with on the network. Turns out Intel doesn't support those anymore, so I couldn't get the configuration tool I needed off their website. But I have it on my desktop at home. This sort of thing, get it running before you come, so you're not sitting in there like trying to recompile a kernel on a 300 megahertz machine in time for the judging, which is also taking place. That's slow.
We missed that one entirely.
What's he doing?
P. Justice let me in on what his horrible plan was. Perhaps some of you have become familiar with, if nothing else, through the advertisement of X10 home automation stuff, which allows you to turn lights on and off remotely.
Oh no.
Well, it turns out the computer interfaces are perfectly capable of generating and reading X10 signals.
Well, sure.
And there are reasonably decent drivers for these computer interfaces under Linux. And with a little bit of work, you can in fact strap an Ethernet interface on the computer to a chunk of custom code running turn on and turn off codes over the X10 stuff. And another X10 module can read them. And thus, you can sit there and push out 1 byte or a nibble per signaling, which would be one of the 16 house codes or one of the 16 device codes on this X10 link. So you can sit there and push 4 bits at a time, slowly. So his protocol is very simple. He has timing recovery. The first half of the byte is the on code, the second half of the byte is the off code. And it sits there and pushes very slowly 1 frame of Ethernet traffic. So you actually send IP frames to a device, which it gets regenerated and pushed out over X10 house codes.
I want to see this work.
It gets worse though, since he's all running on 1 house code and just using device codes to indicate the nibble that he's transmitting. You can in fact build a network of these by setting each one to a different
Its own
house code.
Now, I want to see this. They make these X10 boosters you can get. If your house is too big and has, like, the 2 sides of our 2-phase electrical system, the codes might not get from one side to the other. So they make these repeaters that you plug in, like your dryer outlet, or you wire into your circuit breaker box, that'll actually repeat the codes, and they blast them out at really high strength. So I want to see his system encoding data with one of these repeaters blasting out at really high strength in a neighborhood full of rich yuppies who all have X10 automation.
Shockingly enough, we have a pile of lamp modules with us that we were going to set to the appropriate house code and unit codes and let them just blink.
Well, there's already been one power failure, so
Yes,
maybe
well-
we'll have to run that part on a UPS.
The point, of course, being no anything but Ethernet device is complete without blinky lights. These are
True.
a requirement.
Although the sparks in the intercom are close.
Yes, those come very close.
Yeah, you have to see this thing run, seriously. Rev has seen it. It clicks, it sparks, it growls. It does all sorts of things when you pick up the phone and dial. And it's glorious. It's just like it would have been in an old phone office in the 30s or 40s, except it's this big. And don't touch it.
Yes, please.
There's high voltage inside. It's cool. Who touched it? Was it you that touched it? No.
It was Paul.
That was yeah. Paul was trying to alligator clip something onto the wires, and next thing,
No, actually,
he's standing back.
he was signaling it by grabbing 2 wires and tapping
Oh, okay.
together.
Yeah, that got me too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You've tasted its wrath.
Kept me up an extra hour.
There might be some people into that. I don't know, but it's a lot of fun. So everybody stop by and play with the machines and say, man, this is so cool. I totally could have done this, and then do it next year. Because that's what this is all about, is getting people involved. This is totally within your reach. If you've got a remote control somewhere, and you've got one of those little interfaces, you plug it into your serial port, and your computer you can control with the IR. All right, there are remote controls you can drive with a computer too. There's your hop right there. Bring something, think of something, make it sort of standard so you can hook it into somebody else's something. And maybe next year we'll fill the whole room. And yes,
Do we have to define winners yet, or is everybody still finalizing their?
we don't have to find winners. The power failure kind of set things back a little bit.
But
But
one thing we should do is open it up to questions if anybody would like to ask us, the poor people who came up with this crazy idea and unleashed it, any questions.
yes,
What's the minimum speed you'll accept?
You know, we'd really like to see it push a byte.
per hour maybe.
Yeah, we want to be able to actually verify it's working during the con.
The first year there really weren't a lot of rules. Although I think actually the first and second year rules were the same, weren't they? It's just nobody used them the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there were originally 5 categories. Your network should be the fastest, longest, slowest, most varied, or most absurd. And
All of the above.
yeah, pretty much everybody tried for all of the above. So this year it's pretty much just 2 categories. There's like the serious network that I've kind of set the bar that you should be able to check your email over it. Maybe dial-up speed. It doesn't have to be fast. Hey, if we get something that, the slowest hop in it is a T1, I will be very impressed. OC48 gear is getting cheap, people. Go on eBay. You can blast a couple gigabits over a couple miles of fiber for a couple grand. It's a blast. But no, so the one classification is sort of serious networks that you can do useful things with. And it would be really cool if one end of these entries was actually plugged into the network.